Are you out of your mind? Pat's hand paused midair, chocolate chip cookie halfway to her mouth as she stared at me, eyes wide. Forsaking her cookie like that, I knew she was serious. She asked, I said matter-of-factly. I'm being a good friend. You're being insane, Pat muttered as her hand finally completed its journey. Do you have any idea what you've agreed to? Why, yes, I said. I agreed to accompany Claire to her grandmother's reading of the will. In a haunted house, Pat added. Well, first off, as you know, I live in a haunted house. Why on earth would spending the weekend at someone else's bother me? And that leads me to the second issue, Pat said, waving the hand holding the cookie. Crumbs scattered everywhere, making me momentarily wish I had a dog instead of a cat. A dog would be on it already, cleaning up the mess. Midnight, my black cat, could care less. Why would a reading of a will take an entire weekend? Well, I grant you that is weird, I admitted. I guess there are some issues in the family. Ever since she had gotten pregnant with Daphne 2.5 years ago, Claire hadn't looked well. While I knew some of it was the result of grief, a couple of her good childhood friends had disappeared without a trace around the time she got pregnant. I had a feeling there was more to the story. Something else was wrong with Claire. I don't know, Charlie, Pat said. There's something about this that doesn't feel right. Claire was the first person I met when I first arrived in Redemption, Wisconsin, completely by accident. The truth of the matter is that I was on the run from an abusive fiancé and only stopped in Redemption because I was lost. I never meant to stay. But, as I've since learned, Redemption has its own ideas about who stays and who goes. Before I knew what was happening, I had bought a house, and not just any house, but what the locals considered the most haunted house in an already haunted town, and had opened a tea business out of it. Pat was one of my first customers, and she also became one of my best friends, despite being well over a decade older than me. She was my partner in crime, so to speak, as I found myself inadvertently roped into helping solve crimes related to my tea customers. I agree that it doesn't feel right, I said. The fact that I'm going instead of Doug doesn't exactly help. Doug was Claire's husband and the father of her daughter. Speaking of which, why isn't Doug going? Pat asked, selecting another cookie. Claire said because of Daphne. They don't have anyone who can take her with such short notice for 3 full days, and they think she's too young to come with them. Not to mention the house isn't exactly baby-proofed. Pat rolled her eyes. That's an understatement. I'll tell you why, Pat said. Because it's haunted, that's why. I sighed. All right, I'll bite. Tell me more. Okay, this is what I know. About 20 or 30 years ago, or maybe it's longer. I can't remember anymore. Anyway, Florence, that's Claire's grandmother, decided to have some work done on the house. Was she redoing the kitchen? Maybe it was the basement. Anyway, whichever it was, something happened and the contractor was killed. My eyes widened. Killed? Pat nodded. He fell off a ladder or something. Well, when they were investigating, it came out that there had been all sorts of weird stuff happening. Things kept getting moved around, even though everyone at the site swore they hadn't touched anything. Tools stopped working, and batteries would die, even if they were fresh. Claire needed me. The tone of desperation when she asked me to go made that clear. I didn't understand it at the time. Thought maybe I'd mistaken grief for desperation. But now, I knew that wasn't the case. You'll still keep an eye on Midnight, right? Upon hearing his name, Midnight opened one green eye and looked at me. He was curled up on the seat of one of the kitchen chairs, which of course was pushed close to the window so he could bask in the sunlight. Pat shifted her gaze over to the cat. Of course. A poor innocent animal shouldn't have to suffer for his human's mistakes. Midnight closed his eye and presumably went back to sleep.